friends. Ooh, that V8 sounds great. So it's got a... Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video, we're gonna be going over a 2021 Toyota Land Cruiser, which is the last year for the Land Cruiser here in the US market. First and foremost, so a huge shout out and thank you to the National GMC here in American Fork for giving me some time with this Land Cruiser. Check out the inventory in the description down below. They have a ton of awesome used vehicles like this Land Cruiser. They also have this Z71 Suburban, which is pretty cool as well. And on a side note, I just released my car buying course, so if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to that in the description down below. I can't talk. Let's get into the video. So under the hood, we have a naturally aspirated 5.7 liter V8 that goes through an 8-speed automatic transmission. Power outputs are 381 horsepower and then 401 pound-feet of torque. Now let's go over the front end of the Land Cruiser. So this does have some tasteful light mods you guys can see here with the light pods there at the top of the hood. And then we've got a light bar there on the rack at the very top. And then I love the Land Cruiser hood because it kind of like dips down in the center, and then you guys can see it's raised on either side. Looks really good. And then coming down below, we've got the projector bulbs with the LED accent lights, fog lights down below. We've got the parking sensors here on the front end. And then also we've got the massive chrome front grille with the Toyota logo, and notice got the camera there just down below the logo. And overall, it's a really good looking vehicle. Now coming around the side here, we've got 285mm tires wrapped around 18-inch wheels in the front and over in the rear. Now this is not the stock tire and wheel setup, this is aftermarket, but this is what the Land Cruiser should have from the factory, because first off, these Method wheels look fantastic, and having aggressive off-road tires just makes sense with the Land Cruiser. And then here's a quick look at the front suspension. It looks like we've got some Icon suspension with this thing. This thing is decked out, let me tell you. And then you guys can see the splash guard here. We've got the American flag there added to the side. Side steps with the chrome just up above it. And then we'll pop here to the rear so you guys can kind of see the tire setup. And then let me just pop underneath so we can see kind of the rear suspension setup and all that fun stuff. Nothing too crazy happening, but take a few steps back. You guys can see the rack there at the top, and the stance on this is great. Now here's the key fob. We have our unlock, lock, and then the opening here for the hatch. Just hold that and that'll pop it open. And then you can hold down this portion of the key fob, the lock function, to do the remote start. Notice that part pops, and then you have the little unlock here to lower down the bottom portion, similar to like a Range Rover. But you guys can see storage space here behind the third row. It's pretty good. And we've got the third row actually in place, which is pretty cool. Notice you got this little lever to throw things down. Got the WeatherTech floor mats, extra storage space just underneath. And when you're all done, you have to lift this up yourself. But then as for the top portion, you just press that and it's automated, it'll pop down for you. And then I guess we'll quickly finish things here in the rear. Notice we've got more light pods there at the top for rear visibility, and also when I say rear visibility, to make it so people can see you better, and especially if it's like dusty off-road. Then you guys can see the massive taillights here at the Land Cruiser badge. You got the V8 badge, parking sensors all along the bottom with the receiver hitch there as well, and that's all. So here's the door panel. Notice we got the wood trim, and then we have really nice leather down below that. The windows are automatic, and then here are the seats. So again, really nice leather seats. You can see the perforated leather here on the center portion, and let's actually pop in. Got the grab handle to help out. Legroom. Headroom as well. You guys can see we've got our heated seats for the rear. You've got your climate controls. It looks like it's got 2 different zones here in the back, which is pretty cool. And then as for the third row of the Land Cruiser, it definitely is a little bit more on the cramped side, especially like the legroom portion. So I'd probably reserve that for kids. But other than that, I mean, it's nice and practical, and I love the look of these seats. Definitely beautiful. Let's head to the front. Here's a door panel at the front. Again, we've got the wood trim with the metallic trim down below that, and then all of the leather padding. Memory seats right here. We've got all of our window controls. And you guys can see we've got blind spot monitoring for the mirrors. Land Cruiser logo again. And then here are the front seats, and they are so comfortable. So you guys can see just how plush these seats are. Power adjustments there on the side of the seat. Pedal layout just down below. Got the gas cap release, hood release. Got a bunch of controls here in this section, including like the power folding mirror control, for example, parking sensors. Notice got the A-pillar, LEDs, and then the light bar. And I love how it's actually labeled. Look at that. It's actually labeled for the aftermarket stuff. And then you guys can see here with the steering wheel, it's power adjustable. Let's pop in. Now here is the steering wheel. Notice we got the stitching around the airbag cover, leather around the rest of the steering wheel, and then the wood trim there at the top. You guys can see you've got all your practical controls for like the center stack, voice command controls, cruise control peeping there in the background. We have our turn signal light stock, windshield wiper stock, and well, that's all for the steering wheel. Now here is the center gauge clutch. You can see it's mostly analog for the gauges. Then you do have that little screen there in the center, which you can scroll through different bits of information. You guys can see the average fuel economy as well right here, which isn't too bad for, you know, a large off-road vehicle, if you ask me. And well, there you go. Now here's the center infotainment system. First off, we pop it into reverse. You got a backup camera with trajectory lines. Notice you can change to the bird's eye view. So from a camera perspective, it's really solid actually. Now as for the rest of the infotainment system, response time with the buttons and everything is actually pretty good. And also the screen, it's all easy to use. Doesn't look the most modern per se, but it's easy to use. Analog controls down below it. We've got our analog controls here for the climate system, dual zone here for the front. We have our heated, cooled seats, and notice you have the auto mode on that, which is pretty cool. And then you got a little charging port right next to that. Shifter for the 8-speed automatic with the brake right next to it. We have our ECT power and our ECT seconds, which can help out with towing or off-roading depending on what you're using it for circumstance-wise. Stability control, we got our locker. We have our crawl control right here. Turning assist. And then we've got our hill climb assist, and then you guys can see you can go from 4-wheel high, which we're now, to 4-wheel low, and it's kind of like that whole section. Storage space right here. We have the coolest center console ever because it is, oh, I didn't open it up all the way, a refrigerator as well, so definitely a cool feature. And then coming over to the glove box, pretty normal. It's large though. Got the wood trim there on the glove box, and then you got more leather trim right here. And then popping up to the top here, as you guys can see, we do have a little sunroof here at the top, sunglass holder. Got the controls for the sunroof on either side, and then a pretty normal mirror. Headliner's soft, which is cool, and that's all. Now before we take this out and drive this, we do have to talk about pricing with the Land Cruiser. So since the Land Cruiser has been discontinued in the US, the prices have skyrocketed. Dirt cheap 2021s are going for like somewhere in the 90s if they have super high miles. And then really low mileage ones are going for like well over 6 figures. And so your average Land Cruiser is probably going to be somewhere in the like $100,000 to $110,000 range for average miles, which is pretty crazy to think about. But you know what? People want these things and they don't make them anymore, so supply and demand. Let's take it out and see how it drives. Well, let's talk about visibility before we set off. You guys can see visibility over the hood. Both the mirrors, which again do have blind spot monitoring. And throughout the rest of the rear, and let's set off. So let's set off here in this 2021 Land Cruiser. And the last Land Cruiser I drove was actually a fully armored Land Cruiser, so it's kind of a big difference, right, going to this. And it'll be interesting to see how this drives with the Icon suspension and everything. First off, it's so smooth, incredibly smooth. Also, the seats are very comfortable, and the bolstering on them is pretty open, so like you could be very, very large and still fit in these seats comfortably, which is a big plus. And ooh, that V8 sounds great. So it's got a K&N air intake, and I mean, you can listen to this thing. Oh, that sounds beautiful. Man, just with a few tasteful mods, you can turn the Land Cruiser into such a fun vehicle. We're gonna kind of, we don't have anyone behind us, don't worry. And the 8-speed's so smooth. And I can comment that this Icon suspension is great. So Land Cruiser does kind of have a little bit of a floaty feeling, similar to like a Jeep Wrangler, for example. But this thing drives amazing. It's super smooth. Yeah, the engine transmission's fantastic. Steering too. It has a nice weighted feeling to it, actually. I'm gonna take one more loop with this so we can kind of get a little bit more. I am super impressed with this though. You know, in stock format, the Land Cruiser is a great vehicle, but it's not something that I would be particularly excited about, if that makes sense. I know that sounds, you know, annoying, especially if you're, you know, a Toyota fan, but yeah, it's just not particularly like thrilling to me. But this, man, that sounds good. This sounds great. You know, air intake, that's a very cheap modification, so that's not too bad. But the Icon suspension, that is not exactly cheap, and it really does help how this drives quite a bit. Like, wow. Also, Lamborghini, wow, that thing, you can see the suspension on the Lambo stiff. That thing just like hit so hard. But yeah, this thing's great. So Land Cruiser's discontinued. Values are very high. Is it worth it? I think so. I think the values are only going to get higher because Toyota's going towards twin turbo engines and hybrid engines. And so if you want like a robust, simple, reliable V8, this has that. And with a few tasteful mods like this has, with the lights and the rack and everything, this is perfect. This is like the perfect setup for overlanding. This thing's amazing. I really like this, just with how this drives. And yeah, this is like, for me personally, this is a Land Cruiser I could buy. With the tires, the wheels, everything this has going for it. National GMC has this thing. I love it. Now let's get some things up for our video on this 2021 Toyota Land Cruiser. Again, a huge shout out and thank you to the National GMC here in American Fork for giving me some time with the Land Cruiser. Check out the inventory in the description down below. I'll see you guys.